Good morning, and welcome to our Unitarian Universalist Cooperative Summer Worship Series for 2020. I'm Kendall Gibbons, Senior Minister at the All Souls UU Church in Kansas City, Missouri. When our congregations pivoted suddenly to online worship back in March, in response to the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic, we all had to invent new formats and adapt to new technologies instantly. Many of our ministers and tech staff and volunteers rose to the occasion with great creativity and skill. Now, during our traditional summer break and study time, we take this opportunity to share our discoveries and learn from each other through a series of virtual visits to Sunday services with a cluster of our neighbor congregations. Through the gift of online worship, you will hear from some of our newest up-and-coming young preachers and some of our wisest senior colleagues. You will experience how a variety of congregations have embraced the challenges of these new formats. And our sound, video, and streaming tech folks will enjoy a little well-deserved time off. Look for our separate community online gatherings to resume in September. We hope that today's message will rouse your spirit and resonate with your soul. Good morning, and welcome to the first of our summer co-op services. Welcome to those joining us for this series of congregational visits, and also to our friends from the Boise Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I'm Kendall Gibbons from All Souls UU Church in Kansas City, Missouri, and I am pleased to be sharing this service with my colleague, Reverend Sarah Lawal.
Good morning. It is a joy to be with you this morning. Thank you so much for having my congregation and myself with you. We're so excited to be joining you for worship. One of the wonderful moments of this all virtual worship time that we find ourselves in is that we're able to experience congregations across the country and Unitarian Universalist ministers, and we don't have to run the risk of travel and can do so from the comfort of our own homes. So it is especially exciting for us to be worshiping together this morning. I began my career in Unitarian Universalism as the Director of Religious Education at Neighborhood Church in Pasadena, California. And every single Sunday morning, my minister at the time, the Reverend Jim Nelson, would begin each worship service by reading the words "Second Person Intimate" by the Reverend Kendall Gibbons, and then ringing the bowl. Each week I heard those words anew, and each week they invited me deeper into my own spiritual self, into a place of prayer and of grounding and of connection to that which is larger than all of us. And each week I heard something different. So when I began my ministry here in Boise, I took that practice with me, and I begin each worship service every Sunday morning by reading the words to Second Person Intimate and ringing the bowl. A few years ago, one of our musicians was so taken with the text, he set the words to music, and we are excited to share that with you this morning. This is "Thou Art the Song of My Heart in the Morning." Music by Mike Lemieux, joined by the section leaders of the All Souls Choir, words by the Reverend Kendall Gibbons.
Thou art the song of my heart in the morning. Thou art the dawn of truth in my soul. Thou art the dew of the roses adorning. Thou art the woven whole. Thine is the grace to be steadfast in danger. Thine is the peace that none can destroy. Thine is the face of the need-driven stranger. Thine are the wings of joy. Thou art the deep to the deep in me calling. Thou art a lamp that lights where I tread. Thy way is steep past the peril of falling. Thou art my daily bread. Thine be the praise of my spirit uplifted. Thou art the sea to each flowing stream. Thine be the days that are gathered and sifted. Thou art the deathless stream. Thou art the deathless stream.
This weekend, our nation celebrates the 244th anniversary of its founding, recalling the signing of the Declaration of Independence by members of the Continental Congress in Philadelphia in 1776, announcing their determination to no longer be a colony of Great Britain.
The liberty that was proclaimed in that document was intentionally limited. It did not apply to women, to enslaved people kidnapped from Africa, to indigenous people of the First Nations inhabiting the land before Europeans arrived, or to those without enough wealth to own property.
This country's founders had both an unprecedented vision of democracy's possibilities and imaginations too limited to realize the full implications of their premise that inalienable rights were truly the endowment of all people.
That failure of recognition would weave violence, suffering, and injustice into the fabric of the new nation for centuries to follow, and leave us struggling with its structural oppression in these present days.
In the light of the past 5 weeks, those of the dominant culture must come to this public anniversary date in a mood of humility and inquiry, to ponder what, if anything, can be salvaged of that aspiration for a nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all are created equal.
This morning, we invite you to join in reflection and renewed dedication to the ideals of justice and freedom, of equality and a shared common good, as the ongoing work of true patriots in the genuine meaning of the 4th of July celebration.
May the flame of the chalice that we now kindle summon our spirits to hope, so that we may be called again to hear the cries of resistance, to be strengthened in our struggle, and renewed in our resolve for justice and our faith that together we shall yet find a better way and freedom will come.
Freedom is coming, freedom is coming, freedom is coming, oh yes I know. Freedom is coming, freedom is coming, freedom is coming, oh yes I know. Freedom is coming, freedom is coming, freedom is coming, oh yes I know. Freedom is coming, freedom is coming, freedom is coming, oh yes I know. Oh freedom, oh freedom, oh freedom, freedom is coming, oh yes, oh freedom, oh freedom, oh freedom, freedom is coming, oh yes I know, 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 oh yes, oh justice, oh justice, oh justice, justice is coming, oh yes, oh justice, oh justice, oh justice, justice is coming, oh yes I know, 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 oh yes, oh freedom, oh freedom, oh freedom, freedom is coming, oh yes, freedom is coming, freedom is coming, freedom is coming, oh yes I know, 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 oh yes I know.
Now let's join together in speaking once again our covenant promises to this community. Together we affirm, goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Like to invite all the children and youth out there to come a little closer to the screen, to gather around with your families for our time for all ages this morning. As you heard in my greeting, and as my congregation knows, I spent 10 years as a director of religious education in Pasadena, California. And one of my favorite parts of that job was sharing the time for all ages during worship on Sunday mornings. So I'm especially honored that Reverend Kendall asked me to take on this portion of the worship service. And so I chose a really great story to share with you today, one of my personal favorites. It's a beautiful story about problems and how they have an unexpected way of changing us. And so I wonder if you've ever struggled with a big problem in your life. I wonder if you've ever noticed the grown-ups in your life struggling with a big problem. I wonder if you're noticing our whole country struggling with a big problem, maybe even more than one. Problems can be really scary sometimes, but they can also have a way of changing us. And if we allow ourselves to be open to the possibility, we might begin to see our problems in new and different and even exciting ways. This story is called What Do You Do with the Problem? Written by Kobe Yamada and illustrated by May Beeson. I don't know how it happened, but one day I had a problem. I didn't want it. I didn't ask for it. I really didn't like having a problem, but it was there. Why is it here? What does it want? What do you do with a problem? I thought. I wanted to make it go away. I shooed it. I scowled at it. I tried ignoring it, but nothing worked. I started to worry about my problem. What if it swallows me up? What if my problem sneaks up and gets me? What if it takes away all of my things? I worried a lot. I worried about what would happen. I worried about what could happen. I worried about this and I worried about that. And the more I worried, the bigger my problem became. I wished it would just disappear. I tried everything I could to hide from it. I even found ways to disguise myself, but it still found me. And the more I avoided my problem, the more I saw it everywhere. I thought about it all the time. It didn't feel good at all. I couldn't take it anymore. This has to stop, I declared. Maybe I was making my problem bigger and scarier than it actually was. After all, my problem hadn't really swallowed me up or attacked me. I realized I had to face it. So even though I didn't want to, and even though I was really afraid, I got ready and I tackled my problem. When I got face to face with it, I discovered something. My problem wasn't what I thought it was. I discovered it had something beautiful inside. My problem held an opportunity. It was an opportunity for me to learn and grow, to be brave, to do something. It showed me that it was important to look closely because some opportunities only come once. So now I see problems differently. I'm not afraid of them anymore because I know their secret. Every problem has an opportunity for something good. You just have to look for it.
Our UU congregations are each unique in their own ways, yet there is much that makes us similar. We are all sacred spaces of refuge,
where the inner life of the spirit can be nurtured by beauty and reflection. We are all summoning places where the call of conscience may be amplified and the prophetic demand be met with action. We are all covenant communities of memory and promise, reminding one another that we need never encounter the pain or the possibilities of life alone. We are all institutions seeking to incarnate our ethical ideals in just, inclusive, compassionate, and responsible practice. We are all dependent upon the enthusiasm and generosity of our members to sustain our work and build an enduring legacy. To that end, the offering for this morning will now be gratefully received. In May of this year, Damari McGill, principal flautist for the Seattle Symphony, and some of his colleagues from across the USA decided to record Lift Every Voice and Sing to inspire young Black musicians who don't often see representation of themselves in orchestral music. They created this recording for every protester, for every freedom fighter, everyone who needs to be lifted up, and to honor George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and the numerous others whose lives have been stolen by police violence.
Mr. President, friends and fellow citizens, he who could address this audience without a quailing sensation has stronger nerves than I have. I do not remember ever to have appeared as a speaker before an assembly more shrinkingly, nor with greater distrust of my ability than I do this day. A feeling has crept over me quite unfavorably to the exercise of my limited powers of speech. Fellow citizens, pardon me. Allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I or those I represent to do with your national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and the natural justice embodied in the Declaration of Independence extended to us? And am I therefore called upon to bring our humble offering to the national altar and to confess the benefits and express devout gratitude for the blessings resulting from your independence to us? Would to God, both for your sake and ours, that an affirmative answer could be truthfully returned to these questions. Then would my task be light and my burden easy and delightful. But such is not the state of the case. I say it with a sad sense of disparity between us. I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me. The sunlight that brought light and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me. This 4th of July is yours, not mine. At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument, is needed. Oh, had I the ability and could reach the nation's ear, I would today pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. For it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, and the earthquake. The feeling of the nation must be quickened. The conscience of the nation must be roused. The propriety of the nation must be startled. The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed, and its crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days in the year the gross injustice and cruelty in which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty an unholy license, your national greatness, swelling vanity, your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless, your denunciation of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence, your shouts of liberty and quality, hollow mockery, your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy, a thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of the United States at this very hour. Go where you may, search where you will, roam through all the monarchies and despocies of the old world. Travel through South America, search out every abuse, and when you have found the last, lay your facts by the side of the everyday practices of this nation, and you will say with me that for revolting barbarity and shameless hypocrisy, America reigns without a rival.
Let America Be America Again by Langston Hughes. Let America be America again. Let it be the dream it used to be. Let it be the pioneer on the plain seeking a home where he himself is free. America was never America to me. Let America be the dream the dreamers dreamed. Let it be that great, strong land of love where never kings connive nor tyrants scheme, that any man be crushed by one above. It was never America to me. Oh, let my land be a land where liberty is crowned with no false patriotic wreath, but opportunity is real and life is free, equality in the air we breathe. There's never been equality for me, nor freedom in this homeland of the free. Say, who are you that mumbles in the dark? And who are you that draws your veil across the stars? I am the poor, white, fooled and pushed apart. I am the Negro bearing slavery scars. I am the red man driven from the land. I am the immigrant clutching the hope I seek and finding only the same old stupid plan of dog eat dog, of mighty crush the weak. I am the young man full of strength and hope, tangled in that ancient endless chain of profit, power, gain, of grab the land, of grab the gold, of grab the ways of satisfying need, of work the men, of take the pay, of owning everything for one's own greed. I am the farmer, bondsman to the soil. I am the worker, sold to the machine. I am the Negro, servant to you all. I am the people, humble, hungry, mean, hungry yet today, despite the dream, beaten yet today. Oh, pioneers, I am the man who never got ahead. I am the poorest worker bartered through the years yet. I am the one who dreamt our basic dream in the old world while still a serf of kings, who dreamt a dream so strong, so brave, so true, that even yet its mighty daring sings in every brick and stone, in every furrow turned that's made America the land it has become. Oh, I am the man who sailed those early seas in search of what I meant to be my home. For I am the one who left dark Ireland's shore and Poland's plain and England's grassy lay, and torn from black Africa's strand to build a homeland of the free. The free? Who said the free? Not me. Surely not me. The millions on relief today, the millions shot down when we strike, the millions who have nothing for our pay, for all the dreams we've dreamed and all the songs we've sung and all the hopes we've held and all the flags we've hung, the millions who have nothing for our pay except the dream that's almost dead today. Oh, let America be America again, the land that never has yet been and yet must be the land where every man is free, the land that's mine, the poor man's, Indians, Negroes, me, who made America, whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain must bring back our mighty dream again. Sure, call me any ugly name you choose. The steel of freedom does not stain. From those who live like leeches on people's lives, we must take back our land again. America, oh yes, I say it plain. America was never America to me. And yet I swear this oath, America will be. Out of the rake and ruin of our gangster death, the rape and rot of graft, of stealth and lies, we, the people, must redeem the land, the mines, the plants, the rivers, the mountains, and the endless plain. All the stretch of these great green states, and make America again.
I was born by the river in a little tent, and oh, just like the river I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gon' come. Oh, yes, it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die, 'cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gon' come. Oh, yes it will. Then I go to the movies and I go downtown, but somebody keeps telling me, don't you hang around. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gon' come. Yes, it will. Then I go to my brother, and I say, brother, help me please. But he keeps on knocking me back down on my knees. Oh, there've been times that I thought I couldn't last for long, but now I think I'm able to carry on. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gon' come. Yeah, yes it
A change is gonna come, surely. Even if it be just a few months away yet. This country will never be the same after the current administration is done with it, or we are done with them. Today's generations and our sense of safety will never be the same after our experience of a sudden worldwide pandemic. And our society will never be the same after the confrontation with systemic racism that is still unfolding in our midst. These are all good things, it seems to me. As Adrienne Marie Brown has said, things are not getting worse, they are getting uncovered. It is necessary to hold each other tight and continue to pull back the veil. The 4th of July national anniversary has so often been the celebration of our veils, the ways in which the dominant culture has turned aside from some aspects of our history, refusing to remember them, and painted others in glowing colors that serve to hide their discomforting truths. If the protests and demands for change and policing methods across the country that were triggered by the murder of George Floyd last month prove nothing else, they certainly demonstrate that symbols do in fact matter. Anything can take on a political implication. Face masks, flags, fireworks, tiki torches, kneeling, statues, the phrases Black Lives and Blue Lives. Apparently, Sinclair Lewis never actually said that if fascism ever comes to America, it will arrive wrapped in the flag and carrying a cross, much as he would have probably approved the sentiment, but someone did, and it was a prescient statement. Patriotism is, and at some levels always must be, a religious issue, because religion is the arena in which we deal with symbols and their meanings. Symbols are, in fact, one of the powerful ways in which we connect abstract ideas and values to the practices of our lives, our relationships, and our communities. And religion is precisely the function of that reconnection. It is in the context of religion and the reflective examination of religion called theology that we are invited to identify and examine the power of symbols, both those which are meaningful to each of us as individuals or in our own covenant communities, and those which are abroad in the land, having power for the culture we live in, even if not in our particular minds. The notion of idolatry originates and certainly serves as a religious concept, but I would argue that it has utility beyond the doors of any specific temple. Because symbols require not only to be unpacked and understood at deeper levels, they also need to be judged. Symbols that have any power to touch us deeply or inspire us to action have moral implications. And I believe that part of the Unitarian Universalist gospel is that we are responsible, individually and collectively, for the ethical impact of the symbols that we allow to have power in our lives. This principle applies to values and symbols that we may not think of as falling into the category of religious. As we have lately seen, both historical symbols and political symbols can arouse in us the same kind of fervor, speak to that same sense of intimate identity and ultimate value that touches us in deep places beyond reason and intellectual assent. We need symbols and what symbols do to and for us. Without them, we are deprived of a taproot to reach our full humanity. And yet I think in the end we must take responsibility for which symbols we choose to give our hearts to, in politics no less than in faith. And we must remain open to reconsidering the implications of those symbols to others, for our own interpretations are not the only thing that matters. In an essay for the New York Times a couple of weeks ago, columnist David Brooks said this about leadership. If we had a real leader, she would remind us of our common covenants and our common purposes. America is a diverse country, joined more by a common future than by common pasts. In times of hardships, real leaders re-articulate the purpose of America, why we endure these hardships, and what good we will make out of them. I think that may be a critical insight for this pivotal moment in our grappling with this nation's trajectory. America is a diverse country, joined more by a common future than by our common pasts. Indeed, it feels like whenever we try to manufacture a common past to celebrate, we trip over the realities of oppression and suffering that need to not be erased lest they be repeated or indeed continued even into the present. We cannot make shared heroes out of Christopher Columbus or the Prairie Pioneers or the Pilgrims of the first Thanksgiving without at the same time making invisible the people of the First Nations who suffered violence, genocide, and the theft of their land. The descendants of Europeans and the descendants of the indigenous peoples do not share the narrative of a common past. We cannot celebrate any naive national significance of Independence Day without ignoring the terrible trauma experienced by those brought in chains from the shores of Africa and stripped of the most basic freedoms, dignities, and human rights for many generations. Black people and white people of today are not telling the same story about our collective history, as the words of Frederick Douglass remind us. Refugees from the pogroms of Poland do not share the same ancestral memories as Chinese and Asian immigrants, or as the descendants of French fur trappers or Spanish missionaries. None of their stories are untrue, except the one that says, "And they all lived happily ever after because the good guys won." This morning, I want to suggest that we might stand a much better chance of finding powerfully moving symbols of what we share as Americans if we were to take David Brooks's advice and look for them in the images of our collective future rather than our conflicted pasts. I say this not to seek comfort in oblivion as a white person, nor to suggest that any of our pasts ought to be ignored, nor to deny that traumatic memories of pain and injustice cross the generations and deform the lives of people of color even in the present, nor to diminish the sacred presence and power of the ancestors whose endurance and resilience give us strength today. America contains many communities of shared ancestry, but it is not one such as a whole, and it never has been. The stories of where we have come from are unique and diverse, and can never be forced into some imagined standard outline in order to make us feel connected or reconciled by fiat. The old proverb about those who refuse to learn from history being condemned to repeat it has a fair point. We cannot promise not to reenact the unhealed wounds of generations gone before if we cannot acknowledge the reality of their pain. In order to learn, we must first remember and be willing to hear and hold each other's stories. But our sufferings are just as inalienable as our rights. No one can discard them on another's behalf or appropriate them. Patriarchy, colonialism, and empire must be judged in the court of history and their stolen privileges repudiated and surrendered. That process in itself might be the first chapter in a truly shared history of the United States, one in which all our descendants might anchor their common understanding of citizenship. There are many arguments underway on this 4th of July weekend about both the facts and the meanings of our various pasts, about what is true and what is sacred, what gives us meaning and what gives us pain. To ignore or seek to silence that dissent from a triumphalist narrative is just one more act of colonial cultural dominance, which I believe that our faith calls us to resist. All of us must engage in unpacking the stories and symbols of our pasts, especially the places where reckless power and the grasp of privilege has left injustice, trauma, and complex generational anger and grief in its wake. Those stories must be told and heard if we are to have any hope of integrity, and the ongoing oppressions that still operate to this day must be stopped. The first thing to do when you find yourself stuck in a hole, they say, is to stop digging. And then what? Ta-Nehisi Coates, who in addition to being a leading Black intellectual and author, is very involved in the development of a new generation of comic books, says this: I think those of us who are in the world of policy deeply often underestimate the power of myth. When the Charlottesville stuff was happening, they were trying to get the statue of Lee taken down. I think it was Chuck Schumer or somebody who was quoted, and it was basically like, we're not going to focus on these symbolic issues, we're going to focus on policy. But symbols define what your imagination is. And your imagination, therefore, bounds what possible policy you can have. It's not a mistake that those statues, and I'm getting to the subject of comic books, I promise you, it's not a mistake that those statues went up during the period of redemption and those early days of Jim Crow. It's intentional. It's intentional. It was a statement on what they thought about the humanity of Black people. If I don't think you're a human, there's only a certain amount of range of policy that I'm going to apply to you. Coates continues, I would argue that myth is ultimately the source. How do we decide who's human? How do we reify those beliefs? Where does that dialogue happen? It happens in the world of narrative. It happens in the world of story. Right now, there's this huge fight about who's going to write the comics, how diverse the cast of the comics is going to be. This ranges all the way into Star Wars. It gets really nerdy, and you can think it's a bunch of nerds over here on the side until you realize this is a multi-billion-dollar industry that we're talking about. And then you realize how central those notions are. Like those Marvel movies are defining for people who is going to be human and who's not. The comics and the creative, ultimately, I actually feel might be more important than the journalism. Because people who are kids today, who's going to be seen as human 20 years from now? Who's going to be human 30, 40, 50 years from now? That's why it's so important. That's why this diversity, why Black Panther was so significant. I'll never forget when Black Panther came out, that right-wing dude, Ben Shapiro, he tweets out, Wakanda is not real. And then somebody went to his Twitter feed and found out this dude is going off about Game of Thrones and how awesome Game of Thrones is. So that's real though, right? That's real. Of course everybody knows that Wakanda is not real. Everyone of a certain age, shall we say. Of course it's not real, but this is about myth. What he objects to is creating that myth. You see, he's objecting, and he's right, given his particular political perspective. He's right to fight the battle at the level of myth. We make the mistake of diminishing that battle, and it's a huge mistake. That, to me, is the core. It will bound what policies are possible. If there's any sort of hope for unwinding mass incarceration, for instance, it begins in the comic books. The universes that we imagine shape the futures that we can envision for the world we share. The task of the 4th of July is not to glorify a sanitized, heroicized, legendary history as if it were fact, when the facts are in many respects actually rather horrifying, and the harm that was done continues to resonate and unfold and repeat. Rather, the task is to remind ourselves once again that we are responsible for the symbols to which we give our allegiance, and for the possible futures that they imply. We are accountable for the ways in which we remember the past and who is regarded as fully human. Symbols, writes my colleague Victoria Safford, are deceptive and so dangerous. Crosses, crescents, flags of any colors, a veil or scarf around the head, a turban, yellow ribbons, and today I would add bronze statues and marble monuments. Our symbols are so loaded and they speak so loudly, and half the time we don't know what they're even saying. A patriot should ask. This is the time for patriotic questions. At the turn of the 20th century, the poet James Weldon Johnson conjured with those same questions. How do we acknowledge and honor the past while shaping a vision that can lead us forward to a shared and better future? He answered that challenge so honestly and movingly that his poem, set to music by his brother, has come to be beloved by many and known as the Black National Anthem. It celebrates not bombs bursting in air, but rather the steady beat of feet marching toward freedom, and the aspiration of a community hoping to remain true to a demand for personal, collective, and multi-generational integrity. It was a song for and about Black people, but Johnson always insisted that everyone could and should sing it and share in its invitation to a journey and a future together. Let us lift our voices.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chasing rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our parents sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, Thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, Thou who hast by Thy might led us into the light, keep us forever on God where we met Thee. Bless our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget Thee. Shallow beneath Thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
On these days of celebration of our national anniversary, it is traditional to ask God to bless America, with the assumption that that would mean to increase our comfort, our prosperity, our safety, and our self-satisfaction. Today, let us ask a different, more real and challenging blessing. Spirit of love, in the holy name of freedom, open the eyes of our nation to its honest histories, to its deliberated cruelties, and its efforts to erase its marginalized children. Teach us humility, that we may earnestly seek to redeem harm done and resist harm underway today. Bless this our country with truth, with genuine liberty and authentic justice for all people, and with the vision of a future that leaves no one out of the circle of compassionate community, mutual respect, love of the earth, and the great works of peace, wisdom, and love. Now let's close our time together with our closing song.
Be ours a religion which like sunshine goes everywhere. Its temple all space, its shrine the good heart, its creed all truth, its ritual words of love.
Hi, I'm the Reverend Oscar Sinclair from the Unitarian Church of Lincoln. Just a couple announcements as we draw this service to a close. First, thank you so much for being here today as we were trying this new thing. It's really an exciting part. It's exciting that we get to play a part in this. For the Unitarian Church of Lincoln, our monthly newsletter, The Beacon, was emailed out on June 30th. You can also find it on our website at unitarianlincoln.org. We're also this summer hosting a new spiritual practices class that our admin and membership associate Kelly Ross is helping to put together. So see page 3 in your newsletter for more details, or email the office or me and we can get you connected with that. Also, if you missed getting a yard sign last month, we have another date for pickup. So stop by our parking lot next Sunday, July 12th from noon to 5 p.m. and we will have our remaining signs out there. I just want to say as we close again that it is really exciting that this Sunday, along with at least 9 other Unitarian Universalist congregations around the Midwest, we're starting up the UU Cooperative Summer Worship Series. It was a pleasure to hear Kendall Gibbons preach and to see what All Souls has been doing as we all move into this time of online worship. What this does is it gives us some time to think this summer, to really think about what the next program year is going to be like. So the question for all of us as we go through the next 2 months is, what do you want this community that we're a part of, the Unitarian Church of Lincoln, to be in the next year? We're going to be doing a lot of thinking around that as a board, as a staff team, as a congregation, as we respond to the pandemic and the world around us and the needs of being a religious community in the 21st century. It's an exciting journey to be on. I'm glad we're doing it together, and I'm glad to be a part of this with our other congregations. See you on Thursday night for our Vespers service, and next Sunday for the next of these Cooperative Summer Services. Have a great week. Whoops, that was running for a while.